A lot of people ask why someone becomes an actor, and most of the time the answer isn't fame or money. It starts much earlier than that. For some people, it's the first time they ever felt seen or heard. Acting gave me permission to say the unsayable, to wear a costume, step into someone else's skin, and suddenly tell the truth and be applauded for it. There's something intoxicating about that. You get to advocate, you get to speak, you get to express things you don't yet know how to express as yourself. And I've noticed this over and over again with actors. Many of us didn't come here because we were great communicators. We came here because we weren't. For Christian, that spark came from not knowing how to advocate for himself, but being able to advocate for characters, to give voice to others when his own words still felt out of reach. And even today, that tension is still there. But here's the part we don't talk about enough. The moment that spark turns into a career path, it stops being just personal. It becomes economic. Whether we know it or not, choosing acting is choosing a labor market. A market defined by short contracts, long gaps, intense competition, and uncertainty. Every audition is a trade off. Every yes quietly includes a dozen no's. Every year invested here is a year not invested somewhere else. And we don't make these calculations at 16 or 20. We make them later when the costs are real. So today's conversation isn't about dreams versus reality. It's about understanding the system we stepped into. With Christian, we talk about voice, where it comes from, why it matters, and how the personal reasons we enter this industry collide with the economic realities that shape whether we stay. Because art may begin in self expression, but careers are built on trade offs. Take a listen. Welcome to In the Waiting Room podcast, where we dive into the real lives of working actors. Whether you trained at top schools or came up through self made hustle, this space is for honest conversations about the grind, side jobs, the craft, and the faith it takes to keep going. I'm Rashad Edwards, your host, and this podcast is about the journey between the big breaks. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at In the Waiting Room Pod, and if you're a working actor, fill out the survey in our bio so we can learn from your journey too. Let's get into it. Where are you located? Where are your parents located?
So they're in Atlanta, Georgia. My sister went to med school and residency down here, and she met her now husband, and they have 3 kids. So my parents like moved down here so they could be very close to their grandkids. It takes a lot of pressure off of me to not need to have kids like immediately, but yeah. So that's that. I come here more than I come to like where I grew up, which is Minnesota. So I'm like,
Oh, you're from Minnesota?
yeah, yes, sir. Do you have connections there at all?
No, your state is full of surprises lately. I mean, really, since George Floyd.
Listen, yeah, I mean, like, cause I grew up not in Minneapolis, but a suburb of Minneapolis, and I spent, a ton of time in Minneapolis. I used to be, among many other things, I used to be a dancer, so a lot of my, I would do a lot of rhythm tap, and that was very much based in Minneapolis. We would, like, street perform, we would do all this stuff, and it's like it's a very, like, tight-knit, like, kind of nice community, very, like, loving, but just to see it kind of, like, explode because of I mean, George Floyd, this thing just yesterday with ICE, it's like it's really heartbreaking and yeah, like, it's felt even from afar in terms of, like, the people I know or the people I've been talking to who are still there. It's like it really kinda takes a divot out of your heart to watch
Yeah.
it happen in real time, man. It's
So you went to high school there and
Oh, yeah, so I went to, like, sort of a college preparatory school in Minnesota, and then I went for, high school, and then I went to a liberal arts college in Minnesota where, I kinda, like, wanted to play soccer. It's a great D3 soccer program, so that's why I went there, and I also got, like, scholarship for music and for, like, dance and theater, and I could major in business management, and I ended up double majoring, but kind of what it allowed me to do is, like, anything I sort of wanted in that, like, it wasn't, like, sports-wise, you wouldn't have to, like, commit as fully as you needed to if you went to, like, a D1 program. Similarly, with, like, a conservatory program, for example, you would need to be doing that 100% of your time, but that's what I really liked about my education specifically is, like, it it not only did it require you to study in all these different disciplines, but it afforded you the opportunity to become, like, a very well-rounded human being just based off of what you were interested in. So that's, like I tried to be. I think that's aspirational.
So what happened with soccer?
Well, I kinda, like, hurt my back, like, almost immediately. I had, like, a hairline fracture in one of I think it's, like, the M3 vertebrae. Any
Mhm.
correctors, are gonna say that's wrong, but yeah, so I had to wear a back brace for a bit, and it's a little intense, but I'm all good now. It was just kind of like one of those things of, you know, maybe the universe telling me I should take it easy and pursue other things, so.
And so after that, what did you pursue? Was it mainly the dance, the acting?
Yeah, so, like, I just sort of by happenstance I mean, I really loved acting and I did major in it in college, but it was like my theater professor just encouraged me to audition for summer stock, and I was like summer stock theater between freshman, sophomore year. I booked like a musical at the Ordway Center, and I was doing like another play in St. Croix, Wisconsin. So I was kind of just like cobbling to, or putting together a lot of these sort of summer theater gigs and building a little momentum in terms of like my connections and whatnot. And that's where, like, all the while I was majoring in business and was kind of like, well, maybe I want to go to law school or med school or not really figuring out what I wanted to do. And my theater professor was kind of like, well, first of all, you should audition for grad schools because I think like if you want to do this full time, there's many different paths, as I'm sure the people you've kind of interviewed on this podcast have said as much, where it's like, getting an MFA is one path to kind of like creating a career for yourself in the arts. You can also like move to LA and grind and meet people and network and try and get an agent and figure it out that way, or New York or whatever it is. But he sort of convinced me that that's like you can do that, and at the end of your 3 years, you're gonna get an incredible level of training that, like, you're building a network that way, but then you also get the inherent, like, showcase element of it where we're there facilitating a lot of the networking that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do if you just spent 3 years in New York doing it yourself and trying to figure it out yourself. So, the trade-off felt natural for me, and I was like, "Okay, let's do it," and,
Mhm.
luckily, I was able to get in, and I feel, incredibly grateful, but that was sort of one of those moments of I obviously really wanted it, but it felt validating too of like, "Okay, maybe I'm on the right path, and this is something I could conceivably do for a living."
Yeah. How did you make that choice to step more into acting versus being in business?
Well, I think, like, at the time and this is something I think not that you lose as you grow older, but it's just, like, it's different. At the time, it was very much like this is something I'm passionate about in a way that I wasn't passionate about anything else really in my life up until that point. I think I was like good at a lot of things, but I wasn't necessarily like, oh, this allows me to like explore parts of myself that are unexplored or like express parts of myself I'm unable to express. Like dance to a degree can, or playing sports, athletics, achieving things as a team, but this felt like personal in a therapeutic, like expressive, creative, intellectual, all of checking all these boxes that were nothing had before. And so it was very much like I just really fell in love with it. People talk about how are they get the bug. The acting bug, that's really what it is. It just felt so all-encompassing, and this is I've done a few panels for, my college and alumni panels and things like that, and I always say, because this is kinda how I felt, but I always say, like, if you can envision, kind of like doing anything else with your life, I would say do that. But if you really feel like this is something you have to do and you will regret it for the rest of your life if you don't at least try and give 100% to it and really give it a fair shot, then like do it. You have to. It's one of those things of there are very few avenues right now, like we were just talking about, where it's like, okay, what's happening in Minnesota, for example? How do I have any sort of impact on that? Like maybe I can donate some money, maybe I can go, show up, volunteer, but that's where I was working on this show over the summer at New York Theater Workshop where it's about Nat King Cole, but in it they discuss this idea of like what are your quiet acts of revolution? I think everything costs something, but our ability to just like kind of do whatever we can to like contribute to help move the needle, and that's what I've found of like um acting, lending myself to stories that I really care about or messages I really want to sort of like push and further, whether it's underrepresented groups of people, stories that have sort of gotten lost. I mean, I'm doing a bit more producing now, which we can talk about too, but that's where it's like I want to not only myself obviously build an artistic career, but that's such a part of it of being able to contribute to the conversation, and whether that means I'm playing, I mean, in grad school, for example, I'm playing like a version of a racist cop who shoots a black teenager because he pulls out a sandwich out of his pocket. If that's how I'm able to contribute to further the conversation, it's like that feels like a no-brainer for me. I think how I got into it initially was just for love of the thing. But as you grow older and things prioritize and things change, like, you, for example, like if you have kids, if you lose a parent, if you whatever, what you want to say and how you want to connect yourself to different art and relate to it changes. So that's initially where it's like what I was feeling when I was 21 is like I can express myself. I can grapple with things that I don't have words for, but like these playwrights have words for. I don't feel confident saying sometimes my own feelings or opinions or whatever, but when I understand a character, I know what they want and what they are trying to do. And in my life, I don't necessarily know those things. But if it just provided this level of comfort and love and joy and play, because I knew how to advocate for a character. Maybe in my own life, I didn't know how to advocate for myself. I'm still trying to figure that out.
But is that a true statement, or are you just saying maybe or that to be true? Is that what led you into this field?
I think it's like a lifelong thing ultimately, but yeah, I as a human being, I think I'm a people pleaser. Ultimately, I kind of grew up being either the glue of my family or of my friend group, and like everyone sort of gets along. So I've noticed in therapy that like I have trouble really like putting my opinion out there or my feelings out there and standing behind them 100%, regardless if it maybe makes someone feel uncomfortable or it is like inherently viewed as being combative or contrarian or whatever. I think I will massage my opinion or how I feel into kind of like a more palatable thing. And there's so much privilege inherently in that, which I'm also discovering as well as I've grapple with all of it, that like when and that's what I find so um attractive about acting in any form of artistic expression is it's like um, it allows me the avenue in which to kind of like wholeheartedly commit to something. I think I'm too much like in the middle ground. It's like, and I'm trying to do less of that in my life, but it's hard. So like really advocating for what you believe in, who you love and what you love and protecting them and kind of like being an ally in a sense has always sort of just been something I don't think I'm inherently good at, but that's where like for producing, for example, or like uh, wanting to help my friends' artistic visions. That feels like a very clear input output to me of like, I know I have these things to offer. I believe in you. I believe in what you're doing. Let me help, for example. So, yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
How does your business background inform your producing?
Yeah, so I think that's where I'm still relatively new to it, but what I do for my day job, I work for a tech company. I do this thing called revenue operations, which is a bit of business analytics, strategy, and operations rolled into one. And basically what I do is I help sales teams um take new products to market where it's like who do we think we're gonna set be able to sell this to? How do we target them? How do we message them? How do we measure success? How do we push them along in the deal cycle? How do we close them? And then once we do close them, how do we help them grow? How do we help retain them? How do we help manage them? All of those things. So like viewing every project, whether it is a play or a musical or a film, as like its own startup, like it's its own business because it's its own product. So that's where I feel like a lot of my skill set really comes in of like, oh, how are we going to try and sell this, let's say, to an investor? Is it sort of like they're investing in original content and authenticity, and that's something that aligns with their market brand? Or is it something that's, this film I'm working on right now is LGBTQIA plus focused and sort of like inclusivity and especially body positivity of like we all want to be accepted and how do we learn to love ourselves. I think that's a message that like is applicable to anyone really at the end of the day, but it's like aligning it to a as crummy as it maybe sounds, like sometimes you just need money to be able to make the thing. And so like you have to cater the messaging to um, a certain investor or a certain brand or a certain company, and what how does it align with their values? Because I think that's what I found in just doing research of a lot of buyers now, they will literally not buy from companies. I mean, will boycott certain businesses for social reasons or because they don't align with our values. I think it's such a huge thing. And that's where like independent content, film, us as creators, us as artists, that's another way that like we are moving the needle as well. It's like they're in theory, hopefully responding to kind of like what we as a collective are doing on that front. So yeah, that's where it's like every it's not necessarily the nicest way to think about it, but I do think like every um, when I'm trying to, like, help fundraise specifically, I view everything as, like, it's its own startup, it's its own business, and I really believe in I hate to say the product, but I really always believe in the thing, and, if I believe in the thing, getting people to buy into that vision and what it represents, the people involved, the message, all of that always feels like so much more easy to do and honestly much more, fun and enjoyable, and it scratches the creative itch for me as well, and problem solving, stuff like that, so
So, what percentage of your income comes from that? The role that you have at the tech company?
oh, yeah, yeah, so, it's obviously lately, I mean, it is a full-time 9 to 5, So from that sense, it, like, just beyond the base compensation, there like, with insurance, with everything else, yes, I would say, like, I think I told you probably 70 to 80%, comes from that because it's like it is the thing that has been consistent. I sort of really started, to put 100% into it during the pandemic. I was temping for a while and sort of doing, um, like, data entry, data analysis, ad hoc, like, at different companies, and what sort of ended up happening is there were a lot of places who were like, "We would love to bring you on full time," or they would give an offer, but it would be like, they would see me pursuing another career simultaneously as sort of a reason to not pay me, or advance me or invest in me because it was the thought of like, "Oh, well, you're just gonna abandon us the second you book an acting job," or like, "You're just here as a means to an end." When really the current company I work for, right from the start, when I was applying for the job, which I got in May of 2020, which is incredibly lucky, but I was like, "Listen, I have a completely different career that I'm also pursuing simultaneously, which is acting. I prioritize that. I will need to take time off if anything ever comes up. That's my priority. And if you want me to be a part of the team, that's great. If not, it was lovely talking to you, and I appreciate your time, all of that." And they were just really fantastic right from the beginning. They were like, "Yeah, well, you have a great skill set. We'll make the other stuff work." And that's where it was like I was able to build up during the pandemic a lot of goodwill just by like I mean, I worked my ass off every day to know or to let all of my coworkers know, all of my stakeholders know that like me booking acting things, me taking time away, whatever, everything's always going to get completed and it's always going to be the standard that you're going to expect because this past summer I was doing a play at Near Theater Workshop, and it was like we had rehearsal, we had performances, and I granted it sucked because I was working, let's say during the days, like 8 a.m. to 1, I was working my day job. Then I would have rehearsal into performance like 1 to 11, let's say. That's what I was doing Tuesday through Friday. Saturdays, we would have matinee evenings. Sunday, we would have shows. Monday would be my day off from the show, but Monday all day, I was working my day job. So I literally, for like 3 months, had no days off, no nights free, because I was also taking a stand up comedy class on Monday nights, which was my only free night. So it was like really taxing, physically, emotionally. It was a lot, but it was one of those gifts where, like, in the doing, I was like, "Dude, this is exactly what you want. You're working on something, creative with incredible fucking people, some of the most talented human beings you've ever met or worked with. It's fulfilling in one way, and yet you're still able to continue to do this day job, which those people there are incredible in a different way of like helping support me and provide an opportunity for me to work my intellectual brain, but also just like financially giving me that cushion for the past I mean, I've almost been working there 6 years now. So it's like that, even though it was one of the most exhausting things I've done, it was like it's a gift. I feel kind of like the focusing on everything through a lens of gratitude has always just been so necessary, and when I get further and further away from that, that's where it's like, I realize I need to just find my way back to it because it's the key to everything for me, and yeah, it makes it all worth it, and so, like, I used to always feel, and I'm sure people have said as much, or I don't know if you feel this to a degree, but like out of grad school, I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna work, and I'm gonna be a full-time actor, and, like, I'm really good. So I don't really see, you know,
Yeah, of course.
I don't see like, it's not gonna be hard for me. Like,
Yeah.
it's I'm gonna work right away, and, like, I'll build a career, and this is kind of the trajectory I'll have, and yeah, like, I know other people say it's gonna be hard, but I have this, like, delusional self-belief in myself, at least right out of grad school I did. And then, you know, you start to just do the actual thing and live the actual life, and it's like, uh so much of it is it's so cliche, but it's, like, out of your control. I think for us, to a degree, the landscape itself has just completely changed from when we graduated to, like, how content is being made, how it's being watched, like, who's watching it, what they're prioritizing, um, whether it be social media followers being a big part of casting or, I mean, look, race, gender, all of this stuff that it's like we can't control what content is being prioritized at any given time and what the opportunity is for how you fit within how you as a commodity fit within the industry. And so that's where it was just like I wasn't even ready for any of that stuff. And I, like a lot of us initially right out of grad school, was like, oh, that's a reflection of my self worth that I'm not working. It's a reflection of my like talent. I suck, or like maybe I was delusional to think I could ever book a series reg, or I could, be working consistently off Broadway and then do TV and film occasionally and stuff like that, where it's like,
Yes.
no, actually. And that this is I say this a lot to people, my therapist mainly, but it's like that's what I love about working with very successful people, quote unquote, or like big stars, I guess, in our minds is like it is equal parts. Sometimes it's discouraging, but I try and reframe it into the encouraging part of like, oh, this person is not doing anything different than I am. Like they're not reinventing the wheel in terms of like, I mean, some people are immensely talented, but their like approach, their ability, their to it we're sort of like peers. And that always makes me feel like, oh, I'm actually not that far away from what I think is this like attainable status. It's like encouraging from that standpoint of just to like keep going. It's not that you or I haven't figured it out, and that's why we're not series regulars on a TV show, or that's why we're not working with Ryan Coogler right now. It's actually just like it's a bit of luck, it's a bit of a network, it's a bit of access, it's a bit of whatever it is. That stuff we can't control, but what we can control is like just keep doing the fucking thing, keep showing up, keep like sharpening your craft. For me, it's like so much of this past year has been about relationship building. I think like even though maybe I didn't um work the most I've ever worked out of any year in my life, this year has really I feel like I've met so many collaborators where it's like they've not only inspired me to like try new shit and really like expand the concept of me as like an artist and like creator. I love how I said arter right now. I don't know what that is, but
Martyr.
the
Nah.
yeah, yeah, but like just to push the boundaries of who I am a bit, that like I'm just very excited to invest in people now. Whereas before I was like, how do I get like I don't know how to move the needle on my career, and it's just like I had a friend of mine telling me that like it's really the triangle, right, of craft, career, and community, and, like, that's really what everyone is kind of, like, creating for themselves, and some years, it's like each point of the triangle is gonna get more emphasis, less emphasis, etcetera, but but that's where it's like, I'm really s like, discovering lately that community for me is such an important element of it that, I that's the thing I can control, right? So, like, the craft, I can control going to class, let's say, working on technique, figuring out how to deepen, lengthen, broaden, whatever it is. Same with community. I can invest in my friendships, in my relationships. I could show up to shows. I could do that's something tangibly I can do every day to like feel like I'm moving the needle and just feel like I'm being a good friend to people who inspire me and really teach me and help me learn. And that's where it's like the career stuff that will either figure itself out or it won't figure itself out, but I'm just and I think a lot of us, both from how the landscape is sort of turning out, but just kinda personally how I feel, I'm just kinda sick and tired of waiting for the phone to ring, waiting for an email to come in for an audition that I'm gonna put a ton of time and effort into that who knows if anyone's ever even gonna watch it. I'm gonna feel great about it, and I'm gonna feel enthusiastic and try and still give 100% anytime I get the opportunity to audition, but once it's out of my hands, it's out of my hands, and so, like, the the input-output element of, like, my day job where it's like, you work on something and it has a very clear impact or outcome. That's how I feel about people this year of in my community where it's like, how can I help this person and help this collaborator push their script along, make their movie, connect them with an agent or somebody that I know that I think would be a great, like, what can I do just to like kind of help and hype people, whatever it is, that feels like um lately one of the more validating creatively things I've been able to do as well. And that's what producing has really kind of brought out in me as well. And something that I never really thought when I was applying to NYU and sort of went there, that that's something that I would want to do inherently, but it's just like, oh, it I'm meeting new people and learning new things even as an actor that I didn't know before, so of course I'm gonna try and try and just say yes. Continue to try and, like, expand who I am and what I can offer, I guess.
Does it ever get to you? This the level of uncertainty in the business after you've invested so much into it?
Oh, absolutely. So that's, like, one of those things, again, not to just bring up my therapist all the time, but, like, I've talked to her about it all the time of I'm I think we're both, like, 10-ish years out of grad school at the very least, not to mention years prior that we spent doing this thing and working, and it does feel like at times, um, if I get into a negative headspace, it's like, what am I doing? I feel like what sort of traction have I actually built in this industry, and what have I moved the needle on my career at all? Like, what am I doing? Like, I have no um ability to see future wise what this even is going to be, and yet I still need to like stay the course because, like you said, if I've already put in all this time, energy, money, whatever into it, it feels like quitting or abandoning or, throttling down. It feels like a betrayal to all of those hours, all of that energy, all of those blood, sweat, tears, whatever it might be. Um, and and that's where it's like I was speaking to a very dear friend of mine, and she was saying that like I was specifically talking about like, oh well, if people start to know me as like, let's say, a producer, or I'm also I'm starting to make music now as well. That's a very new thing, starting in 2026.
Oh, what kind of music?
Wanting to do for a while. I am making a rap album, actually, and, I've already written a few songs. I'm working with a couple people on, like, the hooks and the vocals and some stuff too. It's something I've been wanting to do for, like, 8 years.
Are you gonna get the tattoos on your face?
Oh my gosh, that's the first. That's I'm on my way there after this to do that.
Oh,
No, no, but it's I would not have the courage to even begin to try and do that had I not, like I said, this past year, met people and watched people just, like, be like, "You know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna just do this," or say I'm gonna do it, and I'll figure it out, and they do it. Like, I think that watching that happen in real time is just so inspiring because it just takes nothing off the table, and that's where, like, you spoke about the uncertainty. I, of course, feel debilitated by, like, "Oh, it's a barren wasteland of, like, I have no idea what's gonna happen," but I'm trying to turn that into, like, a superpower of, like, "Oh, that's actually endless opportunity," and if I don't create limits for myself, then there's actually no limits out there for what I can do, and I'm trying to tap into that energy. It's really fucking difficult, but I I think I was watching this Coleman Domingo, interview where he said, like, he was about to quit, he was about to throw everything away and just, start really investing in his headshot business, and it was just at that moment when he started to care a lot less, and he stopped basically the message is he stopped putting himself through hoops, um, and by doing that, actually the universe sort of met him where he was at. I I think, this same friend that I mentioned, she is sort of like telling me that the universe kinda meets you where you're at a bit, and before I was like, "Dude, like, what am I doing? I feel like I'm auditioning. I feel like I'm doing the thing, but I don't know what it is. Nobody wants to maybe put me in their thing because of XYZ. I feel like I have very little, agency, where it's like, I actually have a lot of agency in where I choose to put my time and my energy and what I choose to create, where I choose to invest, um, what I can offer, and so, like, just reframing it from that standpoint subsides that feeling of uncertainty. It makes me feel a lot more in control. It makes me feel like, I can build things for myself. I can do, um, do what I've been waiting on other people to provide me or to grant me the opportunity. I think, we're at a really interesting time where independent film and independent content creation, like, is really, um kind of this I don't wanna say bubble, but it is this, like, this community that's really thriving because that's where authenticity and the ability to, like, tell stories that just aren't going to get a lot of the eyeballs, maybe that larger mainstream networks are interested in or studios are interested in. So that's where it's like, if not now, then when? I think that's the same thing with my rap album of like, dude, I, I I'm just gonna keep kicking the can down the road. Or if I put it out there and say I'm gonna do it, that means I'm implicating myself and also in a way, like, I'm gonna collaborate with other people. We're gonna create things together. Who knows, like, what that's gonna inspire in them or the people that they know and the ripple effects of just seeing like it did for me, seeing somebody do some say they're gonna do something, they'll figure it out along the way, and then they do it, and it's always so much more beautiful than I think they initially envisioned, and it's been beautiful to watch, so that's why I'm, like, prioritizing this year, and all of that to say, like, that's what helps me feel like it's actually not uncertainty. I think uncertainty is something that I, like, build up in my head. The certainty part of it, it's like and we didn't really talk about this, but, like, having faith despite the uncertainty, I think that's, with people who are, religious to one degree or another. That's what's always been so aspirational about that world is like, um, yes, of course, you have doubts. What happens after you die? You have doubts of like, why does this person in my family get sick? Why did this accident happen? Why are people starving in Africa? Why? What do I do? And it's like, yes, despite all of that, you still have faith and you still have the ability to like do what you can do in your daily life to kind of address being a good person, putting goodwill out into the world, working so that you can donate to causes that you believe in, all of those things. So, yeah, uncertainty is like always there, but I'm just trying to like reframe it.
No, no, I get it. No, like, no, I like that. I like that because when you say faith, what faith? And let's get specific here.
Yeah. So, yeah, like this is something I'm currently grappling with. I grew up uh Catholic, and I'm a confirmed member of the Catholic Church, and yeah, I think right now where I'm at is I have a higher power, who I choose to call God, um, and that's where like affiliating it sometimes with a specific church because of like um individuals or sort of like sometimes the negative connotations that can sometimes come with people using, let's say, the Bible to explain something socially that I don't necessarily agree with, like, let's say homophobia, for example. That's always difficult for me to associate myself with, as I think it is for a lot of people. So my understanding is I have a God of my own understanding, and what that means is sort of like there's a higher power that is in control, and I'm not in control. And I think that's been really helpful for my mental health too, and for my acting career, is that once I sort of acknowledge that I'm not in control of everything, I am less anxious. I'm less trying to fight for control. I'm less like um nitpicky and holding on way too tight to everything, where it's like kind of what I said before of once I realize that I am not at the wheel and I'm more of a passenger, and there are things that I can do and then there are things that I can't do, and understanding the difference between those two, what I can address, the self-work that I can do to like make sure I am emotionally and mentally and physically um, in a healthy place, let's say, that's what I can control. So that when I go out into the world, I'm not an asshole, first of all, but also like I'm trying to put more good into the world than bad, right? Like I'm trying to be a better friend. I'm trying to be a better son, a better brother, a better uncle, all of these things because that's what I can control. And so that's where like I find having faith in a higher power of like, "Oh, this role, that wasn't meant to be mine." I think rejection is God's protection. I say that to myself a lot of, "Okay, there's a reason. There's a
Yeah.
reason." I don't need to know what the reason is, right? Like, that's the big part of it as well of there's a reason for it. I'm not gonna, like, beat myself up trying to dissect every little thing or, like, if this would have happened, then this would have, or like, "Oh, if only I would have been available for this workshop all this time ago that would have gone to Broadway, then my career would be so." It's like, yeah, but that's not the timeline we live in. That's not the reality of where we're at. So don't just continually build up resentment or build up certain feelings about X, Y, or Z. And that's been, like I said, for my mental, emotional health. It makes me much more at peace with everything. It makes me much more like desperate in auditioning. I think it's like that element, and I do believe to a degree that that's going to have some sort of impact, ripple effect, down the line that I just can't see and I don't need to see because that's not my responsibility. That's kind of what I believe my higher power is for. They'll figure it out.
Right. So your concept of a higher power, do you acknowledge that it comes from your Catholic background?
Yes. Yeah, um I definitely would say that's where the impetus of it comes from. And for me, so much of being raised in Catholicism too, it's like it's culture. It's more like community and family as well, and less about like, okay, this Bible verse um specifically guides my life a lot of the time. It feels a bit more oriented to like yeah, it's like cultural. It's just a part of how I grew up of like going to church on Sundays, the people you would hang
Yeah.
out with, the holidays, the traditions behind that, stuff like that
Yeah.
as well.
This is just a curious question. How can you separate the Bible from scripture in the Bible, from how you live your life as a Catholic?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think like and this is where I when I was in high school, I set out to read the Bible and I abandoned it after I was like a third of the way through because it's a lot, but also um the difficulty I sometimes have is, and I understand why you asked the question because it's like, to a degree, you can't really separate them. But what and this echoes back to my initial thing that I sort of brought up is when people or institutions, um, will cherry pick, certain verses or whatever to prove a certain argument when actually there's another verse in the Bible that contradicts that exact same argument. That's kind of where it's like I, tend to just not from the standpoint of I wanna distance myself from that, I that's where I just get confused.
Ultimately, right now, I can understand how that can create confusion, and that happens, and also, I think any religious text that you can take out of context or when you're trying to explain something. But I think for the most part, what it proved, what the Bible also shows to me, is that human beings are by nature flawed, and that when you rely simply on man to explain things to you, you inevitably will be led into a sense of confusion. But so the one who ultimately gives you that clarity is God. And the more we try to rationalize things and manipulate the words in scripture, the more you get into that confusion, and it can create that distancing for certain people, which I totally get. So I can understand it.
Absolutely, because I think that's where I was speaking to a priest maybe, like, last year, the year before, and I kinda asked a question like that of, like, "Well, how do you explain, school shootings?" Let's say, for example, like, how does someone get to that point to, it's an atrocity, it's terrible, and they were sort of saying, like, it doesn't happen overnight, but it's just, like, an incremental turning away from even if you just don't define it as God, but, like, turning away from this concept of, like,
Yeah.
love love, and,
Mhm.
like, you're just slowly turning your back away from this thing that sort of, like, connects all of us, which is love. Some people define it as God, some people define it as, like, what is the thing that, like, kinda binds us in our understanding of who we are as human beings?
Mhm.
Might how people choose to define the higher power, what religious text they sort of have grown up studying, but it's like this common humanity, if the second we start to or each individual start to, like, maybe put themselves above or their feelings above or whatever, that's where those incremental shifts start to happen, and they start to turn away from, like, good, and that's how
Yeah.
evil can be let in, essentially,
Mm.
is what he was saying. And I like, theoretically and intellectually, I did find that that fascinating. It is sometimes overwhelming and difficult to be like, "Oh, well, that's why all the atrocities in the world happen," but
Well, yeah, I mean,
it
for
feels like a way in to, like, underst or at least begin to try and grapple with it, but, yeah, that's something I've always had really a lot of difficulty with as well.
yeah, imagine how much difficulty God has,
Yeah, right, exactly.
right? Um, but yeah, I think that in my opinion, the more secular our society becomes, the worse off it is. People ridicule religion a lot. "Oh, it's destructive, it's killed people," you know, but let's look at and compare it to secularism and living in a society that has no concept of God. What does that look like? And that's what you have to compare it to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's because I similarly, I brought up the, "Oh, how do you justify, like, crusades," let's say, for example, where it's, like, people saying they are killing on behalf of or like, "Oh, I'm
Yeah,
saving you by spreading this religion," but then also and yeah, like, to say all that to say, that's where I just get confused, and
yeah.
I still haven't, I haven't figured it out, and I don't.
But I guess the more you study and see what the actual word says and what the patterns are, you'll these things will be quite clear to you. What did your parents do for a living?
So my mom was a pediatrician. She actually went to med school through the Air Force, so she's a veteran. She worked on an Air Force base for I was born on an Air Force base. Um,
Oh, which one?
yeah, Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls, Texas. So she basically was the pediatrician for all of the pilots in the Air Force, their kids. So she did that, and then she went on to kind of have her own practice, and then she went into hospital administration. She was like a more like executive on a hospital network, basically managing a group of hospitals. And my dad, he was a dietitian, and for a while was also a stay-at-home dad. So that was like he they sort of just had the conversation of my mom was gonna be able to make more money, and in order to save on childcare, all of that, my dad was just gonna kinda stay at home. And so that's especially at the time, was a little less conventional. I think now um, it's a bit more normalized, but yeah, so I kinda
Well,
had that experience growing up too.
what was that experience like being at home with your dad? For the
Yeah, I
most
mean, it was great. I think, like, that's where, uh, I remember having, like, a few friends who they had a nanny and they barely saw their parents, and I always thought that was so weird. I was like, who do you ask for, like, help on homework or when you're, like, feeling sad or what it's like, just
Mhm.
those, like, basic things, I felt immensely grateful to have at least one of my parents around pretty much all the time. I think it's like such a gift, especially now that, I had a couple friends who lost parents very young. Um, some of them both, and some who never knew either of them, and that's where I just feel so grateful, to have both of my parents still alive, but to have had them be such not only, present forces in my life, but they've also just always been so supportive of anything I wanna do, um, wholeheartedly. Like, if I said tomorrow I wanna we were talking about quitting. If I wanted to quit tomorrow, they would just be like, "We just want you to be happy." Like, it's not about feeling one way or another or them having an agenda or not having an agenda, and I think that sort of, like, selfless love is something that, I don't know how it manifests in my life, but I feel and I would love to be able to give to others in the way I lead my life as well, hopefully. But yeah, man, it's like it's paramount. I obviously can imagine other ways, and I, have friends who I've seen um have different family dynamics, but I think for me, and I just feel so grateful, and I just love
Yeah.
him so much. Yeah.
So your dad, he took you to your extracurricular activities and all those things?
Yeah, it was like because I would have school, and then, depending on time of year, it was either soccer, basketball, or baseball, and then I was always doing dance throughout the year as well. So it was like Mondays through Saturdays, basically. It would be like drive me to school in the morning. Then he would obviously pick me up, take me to whatever I needed to, all the way up until the evening every day. And it was like, and to be honest, it's just like great bonding time. I feel like now, I've always felt this way, but like my dad who is I just spend so much time with. He's just like one of my best friends. Also, at the end of the day, which is not uncommon, but I also feel like it's kind of rare as well, at least in my friend group, where I talk to my parents every day in some capacity, whether it's via text or on the phone. And um, yeah, because I got to be morbid, but there's a time where I won't be able to text them whenever I want or call them whenever I want. And even if it's like, oh God, it's like annoying, or they're annoying me about something, which is happens too. It's like, well, there's a time where I won't have the ability to be annoyed by something they just texts me. And so,
Yeah.
like, that's a gift right now.
Uh-huh.
Even if it's annoying, it's a gift. And it, like, contextualizing it as that way for myself has been, yeah.
So they moved down to Atlanta to help your sister out?
Um, yeah, I mean, like, she, she, like, has her own, she's an obstetrician gynecologist. So she has her own practice here. Her husband, he, works in finance for uh, a telecommunications company, and so they're busy quite often. My sister's on call a lot too because she's still kind of hiring out her full practice. That means she has to kind of take a lot of shifts that she wouldn't normally have to take. So I mean, they my nephews are amazing. They're a bit chaotic and insane sometimes, but seeing my parents as grandparents, it's like it used to be about like destiny or like something they were always meant to be. It just feels like they're in their happy place. They're like it's so lovely to watch. And they're like happy in a different way now than when they had kids. It's just like a different level of fulfillment.
Mhm.
Um, which is which is really, I feel very blessed to be able to watch happen.
How many siblings do you have?
I just have one older sister. She's
Mhm.
she's 4 years older than I am, and
Mhm.
yeah, she's like, I it's one of those things of I never even felt competitive with her because it just felt so she's so out of my league in so many ways. But she's a sport like athlete as well, but like all state, could have played D1, but deciding to go to like, and she got like a perfect on her ACT. She probably doesn't want me to share this. Like the smartest, the most athletic, the like also artistically, she does more uh like visual art, so like sculpting, painting, drawing,
Yeah.
all that. But like immensely talented across the board, and that's where it's like, I never felt competitive against her, I just felt like I was a fan, uh,
Mm.
and, like, it's just inspiring to have that around all the time, I guess I would say, um, and so she also does so she has a master's in public health, so she does a lot of public policy work and for women's healthcare and advocacy, so she's a member of ACOG, which is like this, She works a lot in Washington, DC about, legislation and working to protect women's healthcare and access to the goods and services that they need.
Yeah,
And, especially after this last election, she's really saving the world in the way that in what she does. So it's just, like, inspiring.
yeah.
Eh,
See, your parents must be very proud
yeah, they are. I'd like to think so. I mean, of her for sure.
for both of you. I mean, you guys both have careers and are pursuing what you love to do, making a change in people's lives. That's good. That's what your parents pray for, I imagine, for their children to grow up to be good people, you know? And so you are not focused on marriage or even having children of your own yet?
Not yet. That is something I want, eventually for sure. It's just, and I think a lot of actors feel this way, where yeah, it's the I see so many of my friends who are not in the industry following a specific path of like benchmark age-wise, getting married, getting a house, having kids, etc. Of the timeline of that, it's just like feeling I always felt like, "Oh, I'm behind, I'm behind, like, no, you're actually just on a completely different trajectory, and I have so many friends who are actors or not actors that have had kids in their 40s or late 40s, and it's like, there is no I think other people's success is not your failure. That's kind of what I always try and tell myself too, of like, you're all on your own path here. Um, and so lately I have been feeling like I'm getting older. I need to figure some personal life stuff out, but I also like understand to a degree again it's in my control, but it's not in my control. There are things that I can do to, like, show up or things that I can do to, like, push that along, but also, understanding that I'm only in control of certain things and the rest is not up to me. And so, yeah, it's always one of those things too of, like, I being able to afford to have kids now is a very different conversation than it was 10, 20, especially when my parents had kids or your parents had kids too. So it's like it's stressful. I mean, you see the rate of not only people our age, 30 or above, let's say, owning homes is sort of just consistently gone down to a staggering degree, but the same thing with people having kids, people wanting to have kids, all of these surveys, and so, um, yeah, it is something I want for sure. So, hopefully,
But
hopefully.
yeah. I used to have that outlook on having children and whatnot. And yeah, I used to have that outlook on having children and whatnot. And I've been around people who've tried to plan it and didn't go as planned, and people who don't plan it. God says be fruitful and multiply. It didn't say only be fruitful and multiply if you can afford it. But yes, if you do go ahead and decide to have children, things will be provided. You will provide, of course. You will do what it takes, knowing your character. You're going to do what it takes to make sure that your kids are good, your family's good. There may be some struggle, but that's life. You can't go through life without struggle. And those things are constant with any profession and with any business. You speak about living in New York City. How long have you been in New York City?
So I moved out to go to NYU, in 2012. So yeah.
Right, so 14 years almost?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And what's your living arrangement like? Do you have roommates?
Yeah, so I live alone, and it's a studio, but it's like a generous studio, and yeah, it's I I haven't had a roommate actually, since I moved to New York, I haven't had, a roommate.
Lucky you.
I know. I think I had a really incredible, sublease set up for a while during grad school, which was affordable and helpful and relatively close to NYU. Yeah, I mean, that's something too that, like, uh as you work and you figure it out, and I think with my day job too, it's like you can there's certain things that if you, uh, budget and wanna prioritize, for example, I have a photographer friend who she had to, like, make a decision somewhat recently of, like, "Okay, I can retain a lease on a place because her roommate was moving out, and it's like, if she incurs that added cost of paying for the whole thing, then it's like these other budget items really need to take a hit, or like you cannot be spending in certain ways that you were spending before. But it's like, yeah, but the trade-off of, she was feeling like, well, I'm a certain age now. I feel like I've met a certain threshold where, like, I can be living alone mentally or emotionally or whatever, and that's where it's like, I feel fortunate with my day job of, like, sometimes the sacrifices sometimes that I would have need to make because before I was, like, literally I had 10 odd jobs, and with 10 odd jobs, that means you have 10 bosses, and you have 10 people you need to if you have an audition, you have to let them know, "Oh, today I can't pick your kids up, by the way. I just got this, like, an hour ago, but I have to, like, abandon you." That's really tough, and it's really difficult to juggle all of that, and so that's where, like, in an odd way, doing the more 9 to 5 thing has really afforded me a lot of, more, like obviously, like, financial help, but to a degree, even just the logistics of, like, scheduling, moving, being able to be free at a moment's notice, it's a little, um, it's a little bit more flexible than I think most people would think, and yeah, to that end, it's helped me be able to continue to live alone as well, which is for me and my introverted extrovert personality or extroverted introvert, whichever it is, that's been really, really helpful too, because I need alone time and space as well.
So you say you started off subleasing when you started grad school. Are you living in the same exact place?
No, I live in a new place now, but I was subleasing from somebody who uh was in residency at NYU Langone on one of the NYU hospitals, um, or med schools, and they wanted to, like, keep owning their place and holding on to it, but they just I think they were doing I can't remember exactly what it was. They were doing some, like, lengthy mission work somewhere where they were just, like, out of town. They didn't wanna I had it through, like, a family connection, so I was able to kinda live there in a place that was pretty it was a studio, but something I wouldn't have normally been able to afford that I just kind of, like, lucked into, uh,
Right.
and that was, like especially for grad school, that was it it
Yeah.
it's invaluable, like, some of those lucky things that people fall into, that really, again, is just through community or through people I knew, and you just never know how or when that's gonna kind of, like, amount to anything,
Mhm.
but yeah, it had like I said, an invaluable impact on my life for those 3 years for sure.
And this studio that you're in now, is it rented? You own it?
I own it. And yeah, so it's in the Kips Bay area.
Hmm.
Yeah, which is cool. It's kind of like culturally an odd place. A lot of like broy bars, and I think especially since the pandemic, it's very cookie cutter, all other
Mhm.
things. But Murray Hill is close by. There's a lot of, like, Indian restaurants and culture there and stuff, so,
Mhm.
uh, yeah.
So this 9 to 5 that you work, that you've been working, this has allowed you to afford to purchase your own place, or did you own it prior to the 9 to 5 job?
Yeah, yeah, so that's helped, substantially in that, and yeah, um, it is yeah, I mean, it's still paying the principal, so and by no means it's not, the mortgage is not paid off, but that's where, um, the money is going because it's like, I think the initial impetus behind it too was, uh a lot of the places I'm seeing to rent, it's cost-wise very similar, but this way I'm investing in something and, like, by putting the money out of my account, at least I'm paying for something I'm buying in theory in the long run as opposed to just paying
Yeah.
'cause I don't know, I've lived elsewhere too where it's like sometimes you're just paying a landlord who that for just a place that is not worth the price at all, but it's just like they control access to, um, the the property or to anywhere
Mhm.
to the turnover rate is so high that sometimes you just need to take what is available,
And
and your air conditioner might go unfixed for 6 months, and it's just like you kinda have to live with it, and there's nothing you can do, um, so that's where it's like, again, trying to if you can afford to kind of create agency for yourself or um kind of like able to control where your money is going if or when that ever happens that felt like a well yeah it's a little bit more expensive but in the long run I think it's going to be worth it.
that's a very mature view, especially being an actor, you know? Most people tend to dream and move to the big city. They don't necessarily look at things like that. I mean, even for myself, when I moved to New York City, I didn't think that I'd be living here this long. 20 plus years later, and it's just this year, or actually 2025. Well, it's it's the first time where I actually accepted that New York is my home. This is where I live. This is where I've been living. And, I mean, not that I'm not going to live anywhere else, but I don't know why it took so long for me to accept that New York is where I live. And I guess because I just, growing up in Texas and kind of glorifying being back home, the open space, the big sky, the abundance of land, the abundance of food, right?
Yeah, yeah we have Central Park and there's nature around us but I similarly granted, I grew up more in a suburb, but, I miss nature. I miss, like, going out and seeing a lot of trees and lakes and having space and all this stuff, and I do think we all have ideas of, like, "Oh, even if I just can move out to Jersey and have a house where there's, like, space and, like, you can go and do
Yeah.
whatever," but yeah, it's interesting how the your idea of something versus the reality of how things play out. It's just, like, it doesn't change overnight, but yeah, you just sort of wake up years later and you're like, "Oh yeah, I guess I just live here now."
Mhm.
And like this is my home and as much as I've been fighting it or as much as I thought it would be something else, acceptance of that is sort of a interesting thing to come by. But yeah.
Mhm. Now it's hard for me to ask you this question because I feel like you've already answered it in a way. Do you feel like you've made it?
Oof. I love this question, but I also uh really don't like this question because I think like the goalpost moves so much that this concept of making it is elusive. For myself at least, I'm never going to feel that way. So I think removing it entirely from my vocabulary is kind of what's the most helpful. For me, celebrating the small wins, although difficult, is really the thing that keeps me going. Because I remember I was like, "Oh, the first time I get a recurring on a TV show, that I'm gonna feel like the world is my oyster." It's like, that's just the beginning, it's gonna be this whole and I remember that happening, and that particular, process was really kinda difficult, and it was, like, not what I was expecting, and it kind of, like, it taught me so much, and it was super rewarding, but it was not necessarily, like, what my idea of the thing was, and so at the time, when I was, like, let's say 20 feeling like, "Oh, that's the 'you've made it' benchmark." No, you're actually just, like, a bunch of people in a room trying to figure something out. It's not like it's a finish line that you passed, and so that's where it's, like, as best as I can to get rid of that feeling or to kinda just, like, embrace that I'm not gonna arrive somewhere. There's not, like, a specific destination because it's always moving, it's always changing. I really just focus on, um, celebrating the small things. Sometimes it's just like, "Hey, I met this new collaborator who, years ago, I really just read their plays and thought they were incredible, and now they wanna work with me." Like, that is a win where it feels like, "Oh, I've made it," right? Or like, "Oh, this casting director who, like, has cast some of my favorite movies over the past 15 years, like, knows my name and, like, asked for me to even just audition for this one line like, that feels, like, incredible and is a win, right? So, the because I think the more I try and say, like, "Oh, I haven't made it," again, echoing back to that thing of, like, the universe meets you where you're at. If I act as if or as if I feel like I've already made it, then I have, man. It's like there is not a resume or a specific even, um, achievement that is stamped certified like Christian has made it. I think it's like it's so much more for me. It's like mental and emotional and just like reframing it as such because if I have already like I think about this a lot. If I look back on everything I've done in my quote unquote career thus far, like I've worked with some really fucking incredible people on some really cool stuff. And if I were to quit today, I would feel very happy about everything I've done. I think the thing that keeps me going is like I would just miss it. I would just like be really not myself because it's such a huge part of who I am and my identity and how I express myself.
Mm,
And and realizing that's the feeling of like, oh, I've made it in a sense of like I think making it before was like defining like, oh, this is who I am. I'm an actor. People know me. I'm like known.
mhm,
Fairly like that is how people know me,
mm,
regardless of what the scale is, if it's 50 million followers on Instagram or it's like my community that I feel really great about that I've cultivated and they know me as such. My family knows me as such. Like that ease and understanding of like this is who I am. Um, in and of itself, that feels like I've made it and I'm doing the thing. Like you're doing the thing, we're all doing the thing. And the that that for me, it makes it too much about leaning into the like, oh, I haven't made it part. So I know that that's like a thing I have to get away from in order for me to keep building positivity, feel like I'm building momentum, feel like I'm contributing, feel like I'm you know, uh like you said, being a good human being who's like um an artist that cares and an artist that that want to create and collaborate in a positive way. Um, and it's really tough. It's really tough. I find myself dipping into that comparison mindset so much of made it, not made it. Like, oh, this person's closer to making it than I am. I'm behind them. I need to get more credits. They have 6 TV credits. I only have, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Um, and it's for me the goalpost moves so often that like if I define what the goalposts are and like celebrate the little wins along the way, then I'm good. Yeah.
All right, good. Good stuff. Yes, and thank you, Christian. I really appreciate you. Got a lot going for yourself. Keep encouraging and inspiring, even when you think you're not. That sounds corny, but it's true.
Yeah, and thanks so much for having me. This is like it's so lovely to talk to you and um this whole all these episodes have been really informative in general just to like hear other people grappling with the same
Yeah.
stuff and realizing you're not alone in everything that you're feeling. And that's been like it's been such a balm. And so I really appreciate you for asking me to.
Thank you, man. See you soon. Take care.
All right, sounds good. Thanks again. I
All right.
appreciate you.
Bye.
This is good, bro. Yeah.
That's a wrap for this session in the waiting room. If this resonated with you, share it with another artist on the grind. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at In the Waiting Room Pod for more content and updates. If you're a working actor, head to our bio to fill out our survey. It helps us bring more voices into this community. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and keep showing up. The waiting isn't wasted. See you next time. Peace.